So we're finally back to the MMA talk. I know. It's been a little bit. We've been talking about the YouTube boxing scene for a while, but Dustin Poirier did my boy Conor dirty. Oh my God, he dropped Conor! Oh my God, Dustin Poirier stops Conor McGregor! But yes, he beat Conor. I've accepted it. It has been burned into my soul that Conor McGregor lost to Dustin Poirier. So now that I'm finally done sulking about that, I am back and I have a banger of a fight to talk to you guys about today. We're not going to waste any time. UFC 258 coming up this Saturday. Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare, Usman, Gilbert Burns. Two guys in the 170 division that are absolute monsters. The two best as of right now, in my opinion. And we have a little wrinkle heading into this welterweight title fight, guys. If you don't know, these guys are not only very familiar with each other, they used to be training partners, not for a short amount of time, for years. So much so that Gilbert Burns even came out and said they had over 200 hours of sparring together against each other. I think Kamaru Usman even cornered Gilbert Burns for one of his fights. They know each other very well, which makes this fight even more interesting. So let's get into this thing. UFC 258 welterweight title fight. Gilbert Burns, Kamaru Usman, predictions, and the breakdown. Let's go. All right, so this fight's really going to take place on two planes, and that's mostly every fight, but it's very important here because the skill sets are so equally aligned, and the strengths of Kamaru Usman benefit him to the weaknesses of Gilbert Burns and vice versa. So this fight's going to come down to two things, and while this is going to sound very simple, I'm not trying to oversimplify it. It's just one of those times where it is what it is. So the two things I think are super important in this fight, the striking of Kamaru Usman and the grappling of Gilbert Burns. Why do I think those two things are important? Because the other person has the ability to implement their will in those different aspects. So let's talk about it. Kamaru Usman, the champion, a guy that loves to dominate you during a fight. 5 rounds, he's going to wear on you. He's going to push you into the cage. He's going to grapple, ragdoll you around. He's going to beat up your body with knees. He's going to stomp your feet 200 billion times on the fence. He has some pretty decent striking as well, but his main goal is to strike to then get into his grappling ability. One of his biggest strengths as a striker is his big right hand. Now, we haven't seen Kamaru Usman as necessarily a finisher consistently, but what we have seen him do is improve his striking. His right hand does come out like a piston. Watch him set Colby Covington down a couple of times. He does have knockout power. There's no doubt about that. He has devastating power. The problem that Kamaru Usman runs into from time to time, again, you can look at the Colby Covington fight, is that he doesn't chain punches together or strikes together in combination, in succession, and with a ton of accuracy over the time of 5 rounds, right? He will hit you with big shots. He will land big shots continuously in a round, but they're more one-off shots. Right hand, jab, right hook. Not boom, 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 boom. He's not throwing 4, 5, 6 combination shots, and I'm not saying it's bad. He even mixes up the leg kicks in there, as well as sometimes throwing a high kick now and then because he's never afraid of being taken down. A guy with his grappling ability really wouldn't be. But Saturday's a little different because he's fighting Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is not only a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Add that onto the fact that I think he's a more polished and crisp striker than a guy like Kamaru Usman is. And on top of that, you add the fact that he is an aggressive finisher. He is not punching his way into a grappling situation. He's not punching to find a way to get close to you and grapple. He's punching to knock your fucking head off. And he does it not only aggressively, but he throws in some other strikes, some flying knees. He's a little wild in there, but now he's settled down under Henry Hoof. And we do need to bring this up that Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns obviously are not training together now. Gilbert Burns is under Henry Hoof, which was formerly Black Zillions, where they both trained. Kamaru Usman is now with Trevor Whitman up in Colorado, training with guys like Justin Gaethje. So they have separated their camps, obviously, but it does speak to maybe some of the adjustments and added skills coming into this fight, because over those 200 hours of training, both guys got a really good feel for each other, and I'm sure both guys know what their strengths are and what their opponent's strengths are in this situation. But Kamaru going to Colorado to train with Trevor Whitman and Justin Gaethje, I'm sure he's polished up some of his striking. I'm sure there's some holes they see in Gilbert Burns' game, his over-aggressiveness on the feet, maybe his ability to get a little wild and carefree about being taken down, because again, a high-level black belt on the ground, I don't think he's necessarily concerned with being taken down a lot. But Kamaru Usman's a different guy as well. So here's where you see the cycle of, okay, well, his strengths match up well with his weaknesses, but his strengths match up well with his weaknesses. So there's this dichotomy of skills that both guys possess, and I think it comes down, like I said, to two things. Can Kamaru's striking gain him the respect of Gilbert Burns to not be as aggressive coming forward with his shots? Because I do think that Gilbert Burns pieces his shots together in succession a little better than Kamaru Usman does. And if that happens to be the case, you could see Kamaru Usman start to lose rounds early and look to grapple. Now, If that happens, can Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu help him or hold up under the unrelenting pressure of the forward pressure grappling style of Kamaru Usman? I think both guys can answer yes to those questions. It's just a matter of how they do it. The outside low calf kick can slow a guy like Gilbert Burns down, who's very forward aggressive, mostly boxing style. But I do think that Kamaru utilizing his kicks against Gilbert, not only to the legs, but to the body, even if he wants to go up top and open up the head there just to keep him honest, you slow a guy like Gilbert down, especially early. Then as we go through and see how that gas tank really holds up after 5 rounds of being pressured, because we've seen Gilbert go 5 rounds and we've seen him pressure a guy like Tyron Woodley. But both guys can't be the hammer in this fight, right? Because Kamaru Usman is usually the hammer. He's usually the guy grabbing you, putting you on the fence, and keeping you there for 5 rounds. He's gonna grind that decision out. We've seen Gilbert Burns take it 2 guys, knock them dead. That unrelenting pressure he keeps up in the striking game like he did against Tyron Woodley. His ability to keep that power through 5 rounds, we've seen is there as well. So both guys can't be the hammer. Someone's gonna wilt here. And if you're Kamaru Usman, of course you're gonna look to grapple, but here comes the dichotomy again, because say that Kamaru Usman decides he wants to grapple Gilbert early, tire him out, tire those arms out, tire those legs out, and get him into those later rounds. What happens when Gilbert's flat on his back, but he starts attacking the Kimura to get back to his feet, or he's throwing elbows from the bottom, or he's throwing up a high guard looking for an arm bar, making Kamaru work from the top, and then all of a sudden a scramble ensues, and Gilbert gets his back. Or let's say Gilbert sweeps him, grabs the ankle, puts Kamaru on his back. How many wrestlers are familiar with being on their back in any type of grappling situation where they have to defend themselves, not only from any kind of submission, but from strikes? We've seen even one of Kamaru's new training partners, Justin Gaethje, struggle with being out-grappled by somebody and putting his hands directly on the floor to get back up. What happens when the aggressor becomes the guy that's on the bottom? Not saying it will happen, I'm just saying it can. Just like I'm not saying Kamaru Usman will be able to keep up pace for pace in the striking game with Gilbert Burns, but it can happen. There's some things that both guys can do here. That's what makes this fight so interesting, because they're very, very highly contested. So decision time, and I think Kamaru Usman and still remains your welterweight champion, and I think so for a couple of reasons. I think he's been in this situation before. I understand there's no fans in the arena, but under the lights, in a 5-round title fight. This is the first one Gilbert Burns is doing, and I know there's something to be said for blissful ignorance of the situation and of the moment. But Kamaru Usman has been through the fire in title fights. He didn't just walk in there, land a first-round KO, and he's dipping. A Kamaru Usman fight is basically him walking through fire. Like, he is the fire, and he's going to bring it to you. Every single time he's in there, he's prepared for a 5-round war, and he's gone through one with Colby Covington. He was a 5-round dominator of Tyron Woodley, and I know Gilbert Burns did the same and maybe even better in this situation for the belt. Kamaru Usman's been there, and I do think out of the two of them, we've seen for sure that Kamaru Usman has a gas tank, not only when he's the hammer, but also, I wouldn't call him the nail, but also when he is pressured back. When the pace is put on him, he's able to withstand that, because a lot of guys can push the pace on people. But what happens when the pace is pushed back? What happens when they withstand that pace and then push back the tide on you? Colby Covington did that to Kamaru Usman, and he still stayed there. I do think that Kamaru Usman finds a way to implement his game plan, which I'm sure is putting Gilbert Burns on the cage, draining those arms, draining those legs, taking some pop off of those shots. And I don't know if it's in the first round, the second or third or fourth, but I do think Kamaru Usman starts to build. Both guys have a great idea as to not only who got the better of those exchanges in the training room, but who's going to do it on Saturday night. UFC 258, I'm picking Kamaru Usman and still. And be on the lookout not only for the fight card Saturday, but we have a new series coming out, either Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure yet. You guys have been asking for this series, so I'm pretty sure you're going to like it, because at the end of the day, some of the best matchups are the ones we never got.